Morning, West Shore. I'm Grace Durfee, your worship associate for this morning. We welcome you. We know that you come here for different reasons: to find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture your heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find the answers to some of your bigger questions. We welcome you. We know that you come from different places, different religions, different beliefs, different sexual orientations, different backgrounds. We hope that you will find comfort, connection, challenge, and love here. We hope that you will find ways to provide outreach to others in our congregation, in our local community, and in our world community. A special welcome to newcomers. If you're here in person, be sure to stop by the Welcome Center out in the hallway if you haven't already. And if you've joined via the YouTube live stream, our membership and engagement coordinator, Diane Alcorn, would love to reach out to you. Her contact information is being added to the chat as we speak. A very special welcome to our guest speaker this morning, Venerable Shi Yin Fa, the abbot and founder of Cloudwater Zendo, the Zen Center of Cleveland. He has been a practicing Buddhist for the last 35 years. Venerable Yin Fa has been a fully ordained Buddhist monk since 1998 and is the founder of the Nien Fo Chan order of Buddhist monks. He founded Cloudwater Zendo in 1984 and subsequently founded Zen meditation groups in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Washington State. He is active in interfaith activities in the greater Cleveland area and spent 20 years teaching Buddhism and meditation in Ohio prisons. He also teaches a weekly class on the Chinese internal art of Qigong. Please see the weekly e-news that is sent out by email on Fridays to learn all about the events and activities happening this week in our community. Once again, welcome. We are so glad you are here. For the gift of this day and for our community of spiritual nurture and compassion, we give thanks. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. May our many sparks meet and merge in the communion of heart and soul. Let us witness to the unity of our spirit by saying together the Unison Affirmation words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio su ley. Este es nuestro magnífico convenio, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros.
We come to this good morning, remembering the journey of freedom.
us greet each other as feels mutually comfortable. And if you like, you might include in your greeting a wave at the folks at home participating via live stream. Just turn around and wave at the camera. And now let's turn to our first hymn of the day, number 1014 in the paperback, Standing on the Side of Love. A sampling of wisdom from several Buddhist authors and teachers. Compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It is a relationship between equals. Only when we know our own darkness well can we be present with the darkness of others. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity. Pema Chodron. Compassion can be described as letting ourselves be touched by the vulnerability and suffering that is within ourselves and all beings. The full flowering of compassion also includes action. Not only do we attune to the presence of suffering, we respond to it. If our hearts are ready for anything, we will spontaneously reach out when others are hurting. Living in an ethical way can attune us to the pain and needs of others. But when our hearts are open and awake, we care instinctively. Tara Brach. And here's a warrior spirit prayer of awakening. May all beings be granted with the strength, determination, and wisdom to extinguish anger and reject violence as a way. May all suffering cease, and may I seek, find, and finally realize the love and compassion that already lives within me and allow them to inspire and permeate my every action. May I exercise the precious gift of choice and the power to change that which makes me uniquely human and is the only true path to liberation. May I swiftly reach complete, effortless freedom so that my fearless, unhindered action be a benefit to all. May I lead the life of a warrior. Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams. As children, many of us were taught courage in the form of the warrior or the explorer, bravely facing danger. In Buddhist understanding, however, great courage is not demonstrated by aggression or ambition. Aggression and ambition are often expressions of fear and delusion. The courageous heart is the one that is unafraid to open to the world and to care no matter what. With compassion, we come to trust our capacity to open to life without armoring. As the poet Rilke reminds us, ultimately, it is on our vulnerability that we depend. This is not a poetic ideal, but a living reality, demonstrated by some of our most beloved sages. Mahatma Gandhi had the courage to be jailed and beaten, to persevere through difficulties without giving in to bitterness and despair. His vulnerability became his strength. Martin Luther King Jr. exhorted us, never succumb to the temptations of becoming bitter. As you press for justice, be sure to move with dignity and discipline, using only the instruments of love. At the worst times, such an attitude may seem impossible. Yet something in us knows that closing down is not the way. Yes, the world is full of pain, uncertainty, and injustice. But in this vulnerable human life, every loss is an opportunity either to shut out the world or to stand up with dignity and let the heart respond. Compassion is not foolish. It doesn't just go along with others' want, so that they don't feel bad. There is a yes in compassion, and there is also a no, said with the same courage of heart. No to abuse, no to racism, no to violence, both personal and worldwide. The no is said not out of hate, but out of an unwavering care. Buddhists call this the fierce sword of compassion. It is the powerful no of leaving a destructive family, the agonizing no of allowing an addict to experience the consequences of his acts. In our personal relations, in community, and in every sphere of public life, we can draw on the power of compassion. This is the source of human happiness. Wherever it is practiced, compassion brings us back to life. Jack Kornfield.
And now a short meditation. If you're able to interlace your fingers like this and hold them close to your heart. This is a symbol of a lotus flower. Into that lotus flower, place the love which is in your heart. Put it right in the center of that lotus. Feel its warmth. Feel its compassion. And now we're going to use our breath, breathing in and out. On the out breath, send this compassion, this loving kindness that you're holding in your lotus outward. With every out breath, let it spread, covering all beings in this assembly, all beings in this city, all beings in this world, and all beings in this universe. Let your out-breath spread love, light, and compassion to all beings. And now, having spread this loving energy to all beings, we place our palms together in front of us, concentrating that loving energy, storing it back into our hearts, letting it inform our heart and mind so that we can use it for later. And now all are welcome to come forward to share from the heart, to express a hope, a prayer, an intention, by placing a stone or through writing on a card. Know that what you write on a card will be held in confidence, and if you request a follow-up, the pastoral care team will contact you.
Here are the joys and sorrows of our hearts, which I will take into my meditations this week and pray for all that is our life. And now Barbara Walker will say a few words.
Good morning. I thought I'd give a few remarks before our offertory today based on an experience I had going to our partner church village. So often in this community, in this church, we talk about how giving takes many different forms. We give from our time, our treasure, our talents, and sometimes when we are short one of those, it is such a blessing to have the support of our community there to provide the other ones, to pick up the slack. This trip was such a great example to me of all that is good about our giving and the importance of this. Our trip, 12 of us, the intrepid travelers, we called ourselves, with many gifts to share and, believe me, many, many more to absorb and receive. No doubt in the next few months you'll hear our stories. We can't help but share them, of our travels, what we did, what we experienced spiritually. But I want to share one moment that struck me while I was over there. So customarily, we give a gift, a financial gift. And at the service, the church service there, we give this. Either Sil or Reverend Anthony will give the amount of money that we have collected at our offering and through our fundraising. This year we gave them $5,000. Directly goes into their church budget. I can't tell you how much further that money goes over there, but we have stories. Then, at this service, the gifts kept coming. Honestly, this wasn't my year to give of my finances. I gave a lot of my time and my talents. But here were the creative gifts that we gave to them. Brian Gardner presented a flute solo, combining our hymns with some of theirs. And I hope he gets to play it here one day for you guys because it's beautiful. Megan Ross thought of the idea of giving them the traveling chalice that we used during COVID. For what better place for it to travel to and reside. On it, the box that the chalice came in was painted by Jerry Davis with a painting of our church. Then he surprised them with a gift that he made there, painting the church steeple in the sunset for them. So then, when Dave Clements and I presented them with the $7,800 from the Faithify fundraiser that we did, that many of you contributed and people all over the country gave to, in order to support their work with Ukrainian refugees, it was really a full circle moment. I began to realize what a global impact having a UU partner church can do. Reverend Bela has informed us that in September, that money will be used to bring a bus full of 4 or 5 Ukrainian refugee families to the village from where they're being housed at the Unitarian School in Kolshavar, for about 45 minutes away, and for them to have a weekend in the country, and the money will be used to ask them what they need, and our gifts will be used in that way. So this is truly for me what we do here. When we say we inspire people to give life some meaning and purpose, this is the global impact of that. So today, as we take our offering, may our gifts be graciously received.
Good morning. As always, it is my great joy to be here, and especially to see more of you this time than I saw the last time I was here, in person. What a wonderful thing. So, I'll be speaking, of course, about compassion. The quality of compassion is at the heart of the Buddhist tradition. It was the Buddhist compassion which outlined for us a path out of suffering. As Buddhism developed over time, it emphasized compassion even more. In order to examine this topic, we should define what compassion and justice mean from the Buddhist perspective. The Buddhist view of compassion stems from the practice of wisdom, actually. Developing our wisdom faculty, primarily through the practice of meditation, enables us to perceive directly the interdependence of all phenomena, how they intertwine and influence each other. This causes us to realize on a deep, deep level that all beings are dependent on one another. With this realization, we don't see a so-called other when dealing with our fellow sentient beings. This enables us to be sensitive to whatever difficulties they may be experiencing, and it motivates us to help them transcend these difficulties. We call this compassion. In Mahayana Buddhism, the quality of compassion is embodied in the figure of the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. As you may already know, a bodhisattva is an idealized figure who repeatedly vows to alleviate the suffering of all beings. The word Avalokiteshvara translates as the one who hears the cries of suffering. Being sensitive to the suffering of all beings, the bodhisattva works to end that suffering. There is a very famous Buddhist text known as the Mahaprajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra, the great sutra of the heart of perfect wisdom, also known as the Heart Sutra for short. A central part of this sutra is the story of how Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara developed the ability to detect the suffering of living beings. According to the sutra, it was Avalokiteshvara's deep dive into the nature of existence that revealed to her the inherent connection of all phenomena. So it was the cultivation of wisdom that enabled the Bodhisattva to extend a compassionate heart and to engage in compassionate action on behalf of all beings. The most important part of the Bodhisattva's cultivation of wisdom was the realization, the realization that no one phenomenon exists absolutely isolated from any other. The Bodhisattva looked deeply at all the factors that constitute a living being and found that none of them existed in their own little world, that they were intimately connected with the infinitude of factors that combine to create all living beings. Whenever we chant this sutra at our temple, newcomers would get a little confused by the language because it seems as though we're negating everything that makes us who we are. When we get to the part of the chant that says, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, it seems like we're denying what's right in front of us. But what this passage is really saying is that there are no separately existing eyes, no separately existing ears, and so on. In other words, all our senses are interconnected with all our other senses. All our physical attributes are connected to all the other physical attributes that we possess. Expanding this observational logic, we come to the inescapable conclusion that all living beings are connected to all other living beings. So, seeing that we're connected to all living beings, how can we not be concerned with their welfare? How can we not be willing to assist those beings who are suffering? This is what compassionate beings feel in their hearts and minds. This is the compassion that stems from wisdom. So, what is justice from the Buddhist standpoint? Justice in human affairs is the application of reason, fairness, balance, and impartiality to a particular situation, all done in a way that reflects our innate compassion. From the Buddhist perspective, the just person is the one who cares for the welfare of all beings, one who regards others as having an essential dignity which should be respected. In much of Buddhism, this phenomenon is called Buddha nature, which refers to a person's essential awakened nature. From our standpoint, all sentient beings are essentially awakened beings, although most haven't fully realized this just yet. Although the common definition of justice stems from legal systems that have developed over the centuries, its origin is actually in the human heart. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Justice is really love in calculation. Justice is love correcting that which revolts against love." Notice that Dr. King said correcting instead of punishing, chastising, or admonishing. This is the balance of which I spoke earlier. Compassion must be balanced with wisdom. When this balance is not present, justice falls short. Compassion without wisdom is blind and subject to error, but wisdom without compassion is cold, uncaring, and heartless. The recently deceased Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh warned us about erring solely on the side of wisdom. He said, "Mindfulness must be engaged. Once we see that something needs to be done, we must take action. Seeing and action go together. Otherwise, what is the point of seeing?" Our faculty of wisdom helps us to identify the wrongs that need to be corrected, the perpetrators of those wrongs who need to be checked, and the appropriate action that should be taken to bring things back into a just balance. And since justice has its origin in the human heart, our wisdom is the governor that prevents us from reacting with too much emotion in a given situation. For as we all know, sometimes the desire for justice can lead to very unjust results. In the famous twin verses of the Buddhist text, the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, "He abused me, he beat me, he defeated me, he robbed me. In those who harbor such thoughts, hatred is not appeased. He abused me, he beat me, he defeated me, he robbed me. In those who do not harbor such thoughts, hatred is appeased. Hatreds never cease through hatred in this world. Through love alone they cease. This is an eternal law." The Buddha's constant advice to his followers was not to retaliate, but to practice patience at all times and at all places, even under provocation. When the Buddha used the word love, he was literally referring to non-anger, in other words, the practice of loving kindness. This is the balance to the cold wisdom that sometimes causes people to call for retribution, reprisal, and revenge, which only perpetuates the cycle of suffering. Our Buddhist checklist for determining what is just asks the following questions. Is it fair? Is it reasonable? Is it balanced? And most importantly, does it create suffering or alleviate it? This last question is important for Buddhists because the alleviation of suffering is central to the Buddhist teaching. The core of the Buddhist teaching, as many of you may know, is known as the Four Noble Truths. The truth of the existence of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of the fact that suffering can and must be ended, and the truth of a path that leads to the end of suffering. We can modify the Buddha's Four Noble Truths to deal with the existence of injustice in the world, since injustice is essentially the suffering that those who are being treated unjustly are experiencing. We can say that injustice exists, that injustice has a cause, that injustice can and must be ended, and that there are paths that can alleviate injustice as long as we have the will to follow them. These paths are outlined in all religious and spiritual traditions. There are two categories of justice we are deeply concerned with in the 21st century. Societal justice, which refers to the equitable treatment of all living beings regardless of their status or condition, and criminal justice, which refers to the making of equitable laws to regulate behavior and the interpretation of those laws. If justice is rooted in the balance of compassion and wisdom, the sufferings of those in both categories can be lessened or even eliminated. As was mentioned earlier, I was privileged to teach Buddhism in Ohio State prisons for 20 years, and I saw firsthand the difference between just and unjust correctional techniques. Those who were justly imprisoned for their crimes but had little or no access to true rehabilitation suffered greatly. But those who did have access to true rehabilitation, such as psychological or spiritual counseling, were able in many cases to turn their lives around while still experiencing the consequences of their actions. It goes back to that fourth question on the Buddhist checklist. Does what we're doing create suffering or alleviate it? At our temple, we chant what are known as the 4 great vows of the Bodhisattva. But for this occasion, I decided to modify those 4 great vows to fit the topic, justice through compassion. All living beings without limits I vow to save from suffering. Their endless pain and distress I vow to alleviate. The countless gates of compassion and wisdom I vow to master. The measureless paths to justice I vow to perfect. Vows, which are sacred promises, have a great deal of power. They have the potential to save the people who make them from experiencing suffering, plus they have the potential to save those to whom they are dedicated. If the vows we make are as sincere as possible, great things can be accomplished. In Mahayana Buddhism, there's a story about a bodhisattva who made a series of 48 vows dedicated to all sentient beings who are experiencing suffering. It is said that those vows were so powerful that it created a realm of existence where suffering beings could cultivate without hindrance until they were ready to enter nirvana, the complete end of suffering for all time. We call this realm the Pure Land. If we truly vow to bring justice to our troubled world, to practice compassion tempered with wisdom, we can create a pure land of our own, a realm in which true justice prevails for all. All religious and spiritual practitioners have this ability, so it is up to us to make true justice a reality. Once again, I urge you to remember Thich Nhat Hanh's words, "Seeing and action go together. Otherwise, what is the point of seeing?" Please stand as you are willing and able for hymn 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
Thank you, Terry Selby, for the beautiful music today. And now join me as we extinguish the flame. We extinguish our flames, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us until we meet again. And remember that the coffee hour, which starts at 11:30, and there will be a sermon chat at noon in the chapel. And now the benediction.
For the sake of all sentient beings, let us extend the following wishes. May all beings have true happiness. May all beings be freed from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings be one with the highest perfect joy, and may all beings dwell in equanimity and peace, freed from discrimination and attachment.